If I fail, I will be marked forever from that failure, and no one will see me as anything more than that. This is a common fear that women can hold, and for good reason. Women are criticized for not taking enough risk and being held back from further success because of it. A lot of this has to do with the way that we're raised, because there can be little latitude for anything besides perfection. And this follows us into our careers, creating more caution than we need. But it's not true. Women can fail and recover from it. This episode, we are talking about how to prepare for the inevitable failure that you will face if you're going to be a senior leader. And we'll talk about how to bounce back once you've had a failure. Maybe you've had a failure that you're still recovering from, or maybe you've kept yourself safely secure until now. Either way, you're going to want to listen all the way through this episode to learn this essential skill set. I'm Jill Avey, a career success coach, and this is SisterSmart Leadership, the show that explores how women can rise from director to vice president and beyond by fully leaning into their feminine energy as their biggest advantage. Let's get you one step closer to the recognition and promotion you deserve. Sallie Krawcheck is a great example of how women can rise up, get knocked down, and rise up again. She was considered the most powerful woman on Wall Street, with more than 30,000 people reporting to her as CEO of Citi Wealth Management and as CEO of Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. She was let go from both roles in public exits and has bounced back to launch an incredibly successful new venture. I'm grateful that she's openly shared about her failures, because by breaking through that taboo, she can inspire us all. When she was asked in an interview, "What was it like to open the Wall Street Journal and see that you've been fired?" She said, "My view in life is that you can do one of two things when you've been fired on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. One is to say, this is so humiliating and embarrassing and awful, poor me. And the other is to say, score, I'm on the front page of the Wall Street Journal." If you had told me when I was a young girl growing up in Charleston, South Carolina, and the second to the last to be chosen for all these sports teams, that anything I would do would be anywhere on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, I would have done backflips down the hallway. I think basically it's means of recognizing my privilege to have had the opportunity to do something that would get you that kind of recognition. So how can you prepare yourself to have that same attitude as Sallie? Let's start with some pre-planning. So you want to work before a failure happens. First, you want to socialize that risk. You want to tell people, especially senior leaders, but really people at all levels, you want to take their pulse and make sure that you build allies should it go wrong. You want to talk about how you've analyzed the situation, who else is behind you, why the risk is important to take, and how you're protecting the downsides. My biggest failure came when I worked at a company called Clarisonic, and we made a skincare brush, and we wanted to do an infomercial to sell this product. And so our ad agency had this really incredible idea. It was a little different take on infomercials. So this is where the risk came in, was we knew we were breaking the mold of traditionally how an infomercial was built. But it was a really interesting idea. And myself and the senior leadership team, we all decided together that this was either going to be wildly successful or fail spectacularly, but senior management wanted to take that risk. This wasn't the one that I would not have done this on my own, but I had full backing of the management team. And so we went ahead. And so we had this idea that we would give the product to the Pacific Northwest Ballet for a couple of weeks and have them try the product and then talk about how incredible it was for their skin, because they wear this really heavy makeup and they have terrible skin problems from this makeup. And we were able to create this really beautiful story about what it's like to be a ballet dancer and how hard the lifestyle is and how this little product would help them. And so while it was a really interesting story and people really loved watching it, it didn't sell. And in the first day, the stats were so bad, we yanked it immediately and didn't spend any more money on media. So it was just a complete bomb. But what I did right in that situation was I had the full backing of the leadership team. We talked about that this was a big risk that we were taking. We talked about how exciting it could be. And then we talked about that we knew that it might not work. And that way, when it didn't work, it wasn't a big surprise. It wasn't some big scandal. It just, okay, we tried something that didn't work and we moved on. So when the failure happens, let's talk about what we don't want to do first. First off, we don't want to pretend it didn't happen. Hope it will blow over or sweep it under the rug. Because the thing is that people are still going to talk about it. They're just going to talk about it behind your back. And the other thing that you don't want to do is blame it on someone else. Because when you shift the blame and point fingers, now you're adding integrity issues to that failure, and you'll be marked with both of those. So in our case in Clarisonic, we just talked about it in a management meeting. We told the whole staff what happened and that we tried it and it didn't work and we pulled it. And so everybody could see that we did the right things by not spending more money on it and not giving it too much time, or we just did what we could. And so when we explained all that, really the thing just went away. That's the way that you stop people from gossiping about it and really, kind of keeping it alive. So instead, what we want to do is a no excuses, 100% ownership approach. So dealing with the failure is part emotional work and part political work. There's a lot bigger failures than you can have than the one I just talked about. So the first thing that you want to do is this emotional work first. I want to think about what was my part in this. And so in our program, we talk about the locus of control. And so we have an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. And often women are applying too much internal locus of control and blaming more on the failure than it was actually their part. We have a tool that helps you see where you're at on this. And what we want to do is take a healthy amount of internal locus of control and then also understand the external forces that are at play too, because there's always both. There's always something you could have done better, and there's always some things that were outside of your control that were environmental forces like the economy or competitors or, things like that. As we take a look at what was my part and what was not my part, then we can really apply self-compassion and empathy and forgiveness to yourself. This is really important because without doing that first, it's going to be really hard to stay positive. And this is very important. You want to really be able to stay positive about the failure and not let this get you down. You need to show maturity around it and that courage to be able to talk about it and to be able to stand up there and say, score, like Sally did. That is really going to take you a long ways because it will really start to reduce the gossip mill. And Krawcheck said that I recognize that there were going to be other opportunities to be successful and that there are many opportunities on any given day. I just don't see them. So many things can go right past me and I don't see them and take advantage of them. So success might look like something that was different. And by definition, I was not supposed to be in that job from which I was fired. So if you're being fired, you're not supposed to be in that job. It may be your fault. It may be somebody else's fault. But by definition, I was leaving a bad situation and opening up opportunities to do better things. That's the kind of emotional courage that we want to have in this situation. So the next thing is to cover yourself politically. So you want to take control of the narrative. And this is why we don't want to try to sweep it under the rug, because you want to control what's being said about this issue. And what you want to do is focus everybody on the learning. And so you really want to debrief this and you want to report out what you learned from it. And so going back to my example, we focused on the learning of, hey, don't break the mold when you do an infomercial. There's a reason why they run the way they do, and you've got to use that format. And that's why they work. And that there's a lot of people out there that have spent a lot of time and money figuring this out. We weren't going to create something new. Next, you want to focus on what you've done well in a situation and also maybe what you've done previously well around this area. And you want to make sure to talk about that a lot because you want to focus people on what was good about the situation. And that is your learnings and also where you showcased things that you did well. You want to enlist your allies in supporting you on this message. And so hopefully you can pull everybody together and do a good postmortem and have everybody really face the facts and look at what happened, look at how you prepared, look at what happened and what you've learned and what you're taking forward from this. So I also want to make sure that you listen to episode 33 and 34 coming up in this season on how to develop allies if you don't have those already, because your allies are going to be really important for you in this situation because they're going to be hopefully in those conversations where you're not, and they can stand up for you and have your back so you're not getting taken down by this. Of course, we've had failures with some of the leaders in our Sisters in Leadership community. And we've even had a couple of people who have had employees complain about them. And this was something that they took very seriously. This has happened a couple of times. And this is a situation that is important to take seriously. It's a place where your boss can lose faith in you if you have employees complaining because your boss is, potentially listening to them more than you. But it didn't happen for these two people because of how well they handled it. So one brought her whole team together and openly talked about what was happening, and they worked together to build a different way of being, a different way of working together. And the way that she handled it was so impressive to her boss. She invited her boss to this meeting as well, that it's really elevated her and it's not taken her down at all. And because of this healthy conflict, they've come together stronger than ever. And in the other later situation, the way that she handled it and the maturity that she brought to the situation, it ended up for her that she was actually taken away from that team and given a promotion to run another team. So it worked out to be actually a really beneficial situation for her as well. So if you want to lead at the higher levels, chances are you are going to fail, and maybe even publicly. Krawcheck reminds us that failure is not fatal. She quoted Reshma Sujani, the founder of Girls Who Code, who says, "Boys are taught to be brave and girls are taught to be perfect." In other words, boys have been taught that failure is okay, while girls are taught that failure is embarrassing. And we have to overcome those harmful messages. So some things that you can do today to prepare yourself for the inevitable failure. I always like to give you 3 shifts that you can make at the end of every episode. So first, establish your allies. And again, stay tuned for a couple of episodes coming up in the future for how to do that if you haven't already. And 2, reflect on a failure that you've had and see what locus of control you approach that from. And this might even help you to heal further from that failure if you were taking too much locus of control internally versus externally. And 3, do you have a failure in your life that you need to forgive yourself for? Most of us have something that we're still hanging on to. And don't you deserve to make mistakes like the rest of us? What could you do to give yourself that grace and let go? So now that you have a game plan, in case you have a failure of your own, or hopefully when you have a failure in your own, because I want you to be pushing forward with that kind of risk taking, let us know what you're taking away from this episode in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Was there something that surprised you that you learned? We'd love to hear. Would you like to take your career to the next level? I invite you to check out my 7-Step Passport to Promotion private podcast, where I go through the process that we use with our clients to put them on their path to promotion. You can find the 7-Step Passport to Promotion at SisterSmart.com, and I'll put a link in the show notes for you. So if you want to dive deeper into women's leadership and how to move up in your career, subscribe either on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm on a mission to help women get into leadership and stay there. And if that's aligned with you, I'd love for you to be part of this community and tune into more episodes on SisterSmart Leadership that will support you in becoming the leader that you want to be. If you're ready to fully lean into your feminine leadership and get promoted from director to vice president and beyond, hit that subscribe button so you'll get all the episodes to come. And check out the recommended video here to see how women are rising up without playing by the old rules that built these male-dominated industries and systems.